Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the lowest common denominator. So there's a couple of things that I want to start off by talking about. So we want the lowest, okay? That's important. You will see a lot of common denominators, but we want the lowest common denominator, okay? And so really what we're looking for today when we're talking about lowest common denominators is really common multiples. Okay, today's about multiples, not factors. Okay, so remember, multiples are like skip counting. Okay, you guys already know how to skip count. You've been doing skip counting since probably pre-K, definitely since kindergarten. Okay, so for instance, if I have 2 and I ask you to find me the multiples, that would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. Okay, multiples never stop. Okay, they are infinite. Infinite, meaning they go on forever. Okay, so then if I have the multiples, let's say of 4, that would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and so on. Okay. Now, where can I look if I don't know this skip counting off the top of my head? Absolutely correct, a multiplication chart. Okay, and I would suggest if you do not know your multiplication facts, like lickety split, that you have a multiplication chart in front of you. Okay, that will help you a lot today. So again, we're finding common denominators that are multiples, but we want the smallest. Okay, so if I look over here, I can see that these have a lot of common denominators. Okay, if I went on, if I did the next one, I'd also have a 12 and so on. Okay, but I want the lowest. So once I find one common denominator, I can actually stop. Okay, I don't have to keep writing out. It's not like when we did greatest common factor where we wanted the biggest. This time we want the smallest. So what I would say is that the LCD, the lowest common denominator of 2 and 4, is 4, because that is the lowest common denominator. Okay, so once we have the LCD, then I can start to change fractions so that they are equivalent fractions and they have the same denominator. That is the whole reason why we need to do LCD. Okay, because if I have, let's say I want to add 1/2 plus 1/4. Okay, I cannot add when the denominators are different, pardon me. Okay, I can't add 1/2 like this and 1/4 like this when they're in different denominators. Okay, what I need is to make them both into the same denominator, which is essentially what I did up here. When I found that the LCD was 4, now I know that I can change this 1/2 into fourths. Okay, and once it's into fourths, then I can add it to the fourths. Okay, so I'm going to think about this. 2 times what is 4? Well, that would be 2. And remember from our equivalent fractions from last week, what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So if I went this way, 2 times 2 is 4, I have to go this way. So 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, and I can see that because if I do this, and now if this is a pizza, now I've cut the pizza into 4 pieces, I can see that there's 1, 2 pieces. So 2/4 is equal to 1/2. Okay, so now that I have 2/4, I can add 1/4 together, and then I do not add across the denominators. That is a common misconception. Okay, I don't add across the denominators because look, if I take this piece right here and I put it over here, they're all in fourths, correct? So now this is 3/4. Okay, remember that the denominator tells me what each piece is worth. It tells me that every piece in this pizza is a fourth. This is a fourth, this is a fourth, this is a fourth, and this is a fourth. Okay, the numerator tells me how many pieces. Okay, so in the first picture I had 2 pieces. In this picture I had 1. So when I add it together, now I have 3 pieces. Okay, and each of those 3 pieces is worth a fourth. Okay, let me clear this. So now let's do a few. Now that we've had that introduction, I want to find common denominators for 3/8 and 2/3. Okay, we're not going to add or subtract any fractions today. All we're doing today is finding our LCD, okay? And then we're going to change to that LCD, okay? That's the 2 steps we're going to do today. So in order to find my lowest common denominator, I first have to find common denominators between 8 and 3. Well, remember, that's finding multiples, okay? So first, I want to work with the multiples of 8. Okay, so that would be 8, 16, 24, 32, and 40. And I know that I can go on if I need to. Usually I stop at the 5th one, and if I haven't found a common denominator and I need to add more, I can. Okay, so next I'm going to look at 3. Well, the multiples for 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So that's the 5th one. Well, I'm looking at my lists and I'm not seeing any that are the same yet. So I think I'm going to continue on a little bit with this 3 because I think the LCD might be 24, but I'm going to double check. So my next multiple would be 18, which is not on the list, and then 21, not on the list, and then 24, and that is on the list. Okay, so 24 is a common multiple between 3 and 8. Okay, I also know that because 3 times 8 is 24. So 24 has to be common because if I multiply them together, I get that number. Okay, and that'll work for any denominators that you have. If you multiply the 2 denominators, you're going to get a common denominator. The question is whether that's actually the lowest common denominator or not. Okay, so in this case, I can see because of my multiples here of my list that it is the common and it is also the lowest. Okay, because there's no other. Like this is 8 and 16. That's the first one that's in common. So there's no more that are lower than that. So now what I need to do is I need to take each of these fractions and 2/3. And now I'm going to change to that denominator. Okay? All you have to do here is to think about your relationships. And again, if you don't know these relationships, where can you find them? That is correct. If you do not know the relationships, if you don't know these multiples, okay, you can look at your multiplication chart. Okay. So remember, this part is only about equivalent fractions. Okay. This is exactly what we were working on last week. So I'm going to ask myself, 8 times what is 24? Well, 1, 2, 3. 8 times 3 is 24. And remember, what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So since I multiplied times 3, I'm going to multiply times 3 up here. So 3 times 3 is 9. So that means that 3/8 is equivalent to 9/24. Okay, so now I do the same thing down here. 3 times what is 24? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3 times 8 is 24. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 2 times 8 is 16. Okay? That's where we're going to stop today. Later on this week, we're going to be adding and subtracting these numbers. But for today, all we're going to do is find that lowest common denominator and to change to the lowest common denominator. Those are our two steps today. Okay? So let me clear this. Let me rewrite that. So we want to find our LCD, and then we want to change to the LCD. And let's try a couple more. This time, I want to change 1/6 and 1/3. Okay? Sometimes when you look at your denominators, you don't have to do a list of multiples. Okay? If you can look at your denominators and one of them can go into the other, then that other has to be the lowest common denominator. Okay? Can 6 go into 3 evenly? No. But can 3 go into 6 evenly? Absolutely. So that means that my LCD is 6. And now I'm going to use my multiples to prove it. Okay? So the multiples of 6 are 6, 12, 15, 18, and oh my goodness, what am I doing? That's not correct. That was correct to the 12. 6, 12, yes, 18. Goodness gracious. Then 24, and then 30. There we go. And the multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and I could go on if I want. So I see that 6 is in common. I see that 12 is in common. I see that 18 is in common. Okay, but remember we want the LCD, the lowest. So my lowest common denominator is 6. So I did just prove this. So because the 3 can go into the 6, 6 is my lowest common denominator. Okay? And I like when that happens because then that means that I don't have to change the 6th. Because if I'm over here and I want to change this into 6th, well, wouldn't that be 1/6? It would be exactly the same, right? Okay, so I like when one of the denominators can go into the other because it's actually less work. Because then I only have to change the 1/3 into 6th. So think about 3 times what is 6? That would be 2. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 1 times 2 is 2. So 1/3 is equal to 2/6. Okay? All right. Let's do another one. This time I have 2/5 and 1/6. Okay? Remember, first thing is to find my LCD, so I'm going to write my multiples. So here's for 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Remember, I like to stop at 5 because I can always add more later if I need to. But sometimes I can find it within the first 5. So now I do my multiples for 6. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. Do you see a common denominator yet? I do not. However, if I go up here and I add one more to my list of 5s, now I have a common denominator. And since there's not another one in this list before 30 that's common, that is my LCD. So the LCD is 30. So now that I know my LCD, now I change my 2/5 into 30ths, and I change my 1/6 into 30ths. And I just use my relationships. So 5 times what is 30? 6. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 2 times 6 is 12. So 2/5 and 12/30ths are equivalent. Down here, 6 times what is 30? That would be 5. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So what's 1 times 5? 5. So 1/6 is equal to 5/30ths. All right, last one on this video. This time I have 1/3 and 4/5. Okay, so I need to first find my common denominator for 3 and 5 by looking at my multiples. Okay, before we do that, do you have a prediction? Think for a second and think about what you might think the LCD is, because sometimes your predictions are correct. All right, so let's do our list of 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And let's do our list of 5s. 5, 10, 15. Okay, do I need to go on? Okay, remember it's the LCD, right? It's the lowest. So once I hit one number that is in common, I don't have to continue on. Okay, I can if I just really want to, but you don't have to because we want the lowest. So now that I know that my LCD is 15, now I'm going to change them. So I'm changing 1/3 into 15ths and 4/5 into 15ths. Okay, so 3 times what is 15? That would be 5. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 1 times 5 is 5. 1/3 and 5/15ths are equivalent. 5 times what is 15? 3. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 4 times 3 is 12. So 4/5 is equivalent to 12/15ths.